Welcome to this video on concepts in civil liberties. We begin with foundational concepts, specifically applying rights to states. These terms describe the legal theories and processes determining how the Bill of Rights protects citizens from state and local governments. Civil liberties are constitutionally established guarantees that protect citizens, opinions, and property against arbitrary government interference. Due process are legal safeguards that prevent the government from arbitrarily depriving citizens of life, liberty, or property, guaranteed by the 5th and 14th Amendments. Selective incorporation is the process the court used to apply the Bill of Rights to states, one right at a time. Total incorporation, a rejected theory, would have applied all rights to states simultaneously. McDonald versus Chicago is a key example of selective incorporation, applying the Second Amendment right to bear arms against the states. Next, we cover freedom of speech and press under the First Amendment. This large category is best understood through the tests the court uses to decide when speech can be restricted. The clear and present danger test, from Schenck versus U.S., restricts speech only when it poses an evident and immediate danger. The bad tendency test, from Gitlow versus New York, allows speech to be silenced if it has a tendency to lead to something bad. The clear and probable danger test, from Dennis versus U.S., allows suppressing speech if the potential danger is, quote, grave, even if it is not likely to happen soon. The imminent lawless action test, from Brandenburg versus Ohio, protects speech unless it is directed at inciting immediate lawless action and is likely to produce it. Regarding types of speech, symbolic speech is nonverbal actions, armbands, flags, are protected speech. Tinker versus Des Moines is a Supreme Court decision protecting students' political speech in public schools, as long as it does not interfere with the educational process. Commercial speech, or advertising, has limited First Amendment protection. Regulations may restrict it if they advance a substantial government interest and are no broader than necessary. Fighting words, which are likely to cause public disorder, may be banned in public places. Obscenity is indecent or offensive speech and is not protected under the First Amendment. Slander involves false verbal statements that harm a reputation. Libel is a published, false statement that damages a person's reputation, exposing them to public ridicule. In press and politics, prior restraint, which is government censorship blocking publication, is almost always unconstitutional, as affirmed in New York Times versus U.S. Citizens United versus FEC ruled that corporations and labor unions have First Amendment protections, allowing independent political spending like super PACs. Regulations such as time, place, and manner restrictions are content-neutral rules governing when, where, or how expression may occur. Next, we look at freedom of religion under the First Amendment. The Constitution addresses both what the government cannot do and what the individual is allowed to do concerning faith. The Establishment Clause is the First Amendment clause barring the government from establishing a religion or favoring religion over non-religion. Engel versus Vitale is Supreme Court decision banning formal teacher or administrator-led prayer in public elementary or secondary schools as a violation of the Establishment Clause. The Free Exercise Clause protects the individual's right to practice their faith without state interference. Wisconsin v. Yoder is a Supreme Court decision holding that Amish families may withdraw their children from school after 8th grade under the Free Exercise Clause. Now we examine criminal due process rights, found in the 4th, 5th, and 6th, 8th Amendments. These 4 amendments together are known as the criminal due process rights. Criminal due process rights are safeguards for those accused of crime that constrain government conduct in investigating crimes, trying cases, and punishing offenders. Habeas corpus protects an individual in custody from being held without the right to be heard in court. The exclusionary rule, established in Mapp versus Ohio, prevents illegally obtained evidence from being used in court. Miranda rights, from Miranda versus Arizona, is the rule requiring police to inform suspects, upon arrest and before interrogation, of their rights to remain silent and to counsel. Gideon versus Wainwright is a Supreme Court decision holding that the 6th Amendment's right to counsel requires the government to provide an attorney for people who cannot afford one. Double jeopardy, barred by the 5th Amendment, is the protection against being tried twice for the same crime. The 8th Amendment protects against cruel and unusual punishments and excessive fines, with key Supreme Court cases focusing on capital punishment for specific populations, prison conditions, and mandatory sentencing. Major rulings include Furman versus Georgia, 1972, on arbitrary death penalties, banning it. Gregg versus Georgia, 1976, reinstating the death penalty. Atkins versus Virginia, 2002, banning execution of the mentally disabled. Roper versus Simmons, 2005, banning juvenile death penalties. Brown versus Plata, 2011, regarding prison overcrowding. The right to privacy is not explicitly written in the Constitution, but the court has interpreted several amendments to create a, quote, zone of privacy. The right to privacy is the right of an individual to be left alone and to make decisions freely, without interference from others. Roe v. Wade is a Supreme Court decision that expanded the right to privacy to include a woman's right to have an abortion, balanced against state interests later overturned by Dobbs. Dobbs v. Jackson overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022, ruling that the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion and returned abortion regulation to state legislatures.